being slow. All right, here we go. Is everybody able to see that? Did I do that right? We good? Jamie, we good? Can you see it?
Yep, I can see it.
Excellent. Okay. Well, yeah, so we're going to talk about, the impact of video storytelling, specifically as it relates to healthcare. And just want to thank you all so much for being here today. Really, I kind of want to go through, the sort of a little bit about video production, a little bit about the story arcs and how to tell a good story, and then some examples. And that's kind of the three main things that I'll be going through. Jamie will also be presenting to talk about what she does with Unanimous as well. But just a little bit about me. So my name is Bill Grippenstraw. I get a lot of questions about how to pronounce my last name. I always say it's like a hand gripping a straw. So yeah, Bill Grippenstraw. I grew up in Central City, Nebraska. I've actually lived in Nebraska my whole life. I'm a self-taught filmmaker with 15 years of experience. I've gotten to do a lot of different projects over the years, lots of different types of work. I've been fortunate to have my work that I've been a part of on lots of different platforms. And sorry, did somebody say something?
Bill, you're good. Sorry, I was letting people in, and you're back muted. Just FYI.
Starting to have it with Canva too. Yeah, we're trying to get Bill, you're muted.
There we go.
You're back.
You're
back.
All right. Well, I don't know where I got muted at, but anyway, so I've been able to do a lot of different types of work throughout the years. I've worked with a lot of different nonprofits as well, doing PSAs and campaigns that have helped raise a lot of money, and just really gotten to do some cool projects, gotten to travel because of this career, been to 5 different countries doing different types of work, as well as lots of different states around the country. And currently I'm a commercial director and I'm the head of video production at Unanimous. So growing up in a small town in Central City, I never quite knew exactly what I wanted to do with my career, but I found out at a young age I just really liked making videos and kind of just pursued that. And I guess one thing led to another, and here I am. So that's a little bit about me, and Jamie is going to go ahead and introduce herself now.
Yeah, hey everybody. Jamie Reha, I'm the marketing director here at Unanimous. Born and raised in Nebraska, graduated from UNL. I did leave for several years and worked in Kansas City, where I was fortunate to have a lot of different jobs at agencies where I really found my love and passion for not just marketing and advertising, but I think just the relationship and the partnership side of things with clients. And really what I love is building those relationships, but really finding a true understanding of the challenges and the problems that exist with our partners and organizations, and helping them turn those into opportunities or growth or efficiencies. So I'm approaching 5 years here at Unanimous. It's really my second family, and with marketing, we get to work really closely with all of our departments, video, web, creative. So yeah, I love what I get to do, and I'll talk a little bit more about Unanimous as well as just the distribution side of video kind of towards the end of this presentation. But for those of you who maybe are not familiar with us, we are, to sum it up, a brand alignment agency. So, really helping bridge verbal, which is the words and the communication, with your visual brand to create a really authentic representation of who you are, your brand, your organization. So that's branding, that's marketing, advertising, design, web, everything to help create a really cohesive and consistent brand kind of identity. And then really helping figure out partners how to communicate those messages, reach the right audience, and be super intentional. So we're located in Lincoln, Nebraska, headquartered. We have a few remote employees throughout the country as well. I think today we're at 24. Probably we'll be adding a few more team members this year as we see some continued growth. We have clients. We have a lot of local, Midwest-based clients, but work with really clients throughout the country, even some international clients. There's really no kind of limitations. We work with small clients, bigger clients, marketing teams of one, bigger marketing teams really just help fill the gap of where needed. And we have a lot of experience specifically in healthcare. And just kind of a fun fact, unanimous means one mind. So it's really kind of our theme and focus to kind of be a partner and extension of your team and really evoke collaboration and working alongside you guys. So like I mentioned, we do have a lot of experience kind of in the health and wellness industry. We kind of understand the nuances or the stakeholders that are involved. We've done a lot of research in this space. We've talked to a lot of patients, providers, board members, community members, and I think have a pretty good understanding of just this space. We also recognize that every healthcare organization is very unique and has a different set of challenges and opportunities and goals. And so it's always our first step in any project to really dive deep and understanding your specific needs and goals and challenges. So, healthcare, as we know, can be anything from an organization, like Broadstone Healthcare. It can be, Sagewell as an urgent care, LOPT is Lincoln Orthopedic. So a lot of different sizes and types of healthcare organizations. These are just a few partners that we either currently work with or have worked with in the past. So I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to Bill, and he is going to talk more about video storytelling, what that means, and hopefully relate it to kind of your guys' day-to-day organization and operations as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Like I said, there's kind of three main things I want to cover as we talk about storytelling. And the first is just kind of talking about video production approaches, because this is something we get asked about a lot. And we live in a world that is very heavily driven by video content now. We all are watching videos, or at least most of us are watching videos every single day on social platforms, on TVs, shows, movies, that sort of thing. And then after we talk a little bit about just kind of lay some foundation for just helping you maybe understand some of this if you haven't really done a ton of video production, or if you haven't partnered with any video production companies before or anything like that. From there, we're going to talk about storytelling and just kind of lay down a foundational understanding of storytelling that I think will be really useful for you in a lot of different areas of marketing, not just in video production specific, because storytelling is kind of universal. It can apply to a lot of different things. And then from there, we'll dive down into some specifics around video as it relates to healthcare, and some different approaches that you can take for that. So that being said, with video production approaches, really, I think there's kind of, in my mind and in the minds of a lot of other people who do what I do, there's kind of three types of categories, I suppose, for how you can go about creating video content. First is user-generated social content. And we say user-generated, sometimes as an agency here at Unanimous, we also participate in creating social content as well. But a lot of the content that you'll see on social media is user generated, meaning, just regular everyday people with their phones making content. And a lot of it is built for short attention spans. And I think that, we all, like I said, we're all watching social content every day. A lot of times you might watch 10 or 15 reels or something, and you share the best ones with some friends or whatever, but you probably kind of forget what you watched. And that's just sort of what it's built for. It's often shot on phones with little to no production value, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because social content performs best when it feels authentic, like it was created by a real person. And so that's why we have influencers, right? And they kind of get to make brands partner with people to kind of make content the way that they want to make it. And a lot of times that's not necessarily going to be the way that a filmmaker would do it. It's more about creating something authentic, and sometimes too, I mean, you can get really great results with social user generated social content, and so that's something, that a lot of times when I'm talking to different organizations, and we're talking about storytelling, it's like you've got the tools to tell great stories in your pocket. And so sometimes it just takes some practice and, some understanding of how to, create this type of content and storytelling, but you can do it, and it can serve you well if you do it right. The next level is generalist videography. And this is kind of where I came from, more or less. Growing up in Central City, like I mentioned, I kind of early on, I started getting hired to film weddings and to do, small videos for different companies. And what I'll say about it is it's very dependent on the videographer's skill level. Not all videographers are created equally. Not all are experienced equally. So there are some extremely talented solo videographers out there, and a lot of times your footage quality might be driven more by the location, just because if you're working with a solo person or like maybe one or two people, you're not really going to have much control. And so through the years, I've shot a lot of stuff. I've shot some stuff that I think is really nice. But what I found was a lot of times it was, well, it's golden hour, or it's like, this is just a beautiful place, or the people were just wearing the perfect, wardrobe that matches everything else in the room. And so there's a lot of stuff like that you can't necessarily control. And sometimes a videographer might shoot in like a poorly lit location with overhead lighting, and it just doesn't look great. But if you work with a talented videographer, they're going to try to set themselves up for success by putting themselves in strategically in places that really work for them. A lot of times you're working with one person, so you're not going to have a ton of collaboration, and not as super thorough pre-production. And then the post turnaround is going to be dependent on your videographer, how fast they edit, how thorough they edit, how much time they have, their availability, sometimes just how much they want it to be great. Is sometimes that's really a key metric there as well. And really, this is a good lane for, just kind of real world footage that's maybe you want something that's elevated, that's not shot on a phone, events, informational videos, like, corporate training videos, simple testimonials. That's where it's not necessarily worth it to invest a ton more into it, because you're not necessarily getting as much of a return on that investment. But if you can hire a quality videographer, skilled videographer, you can still get some really good content, in that lane. And then for me as a journalist videographer, where I really started to kind of, I tried to be the jack of all trades, but at a certain point, I felt like I'm trying to do too much. I'm hitting a ceiling constantly, and I want to create something that's a little bit higher level. And as just like in healthcare, you have specialists for a reason, and specialists are going to be very focused on specific skills and specific types of healthcare. And same way in filmmaking. If you ever watch a movie and you watch the credits, you're going to see, tons of roles at the end, like a grip, gaffer, DP, AC, nerdy stuff that you don't necessarily need to know what all those things are, but it's specialized people who do specific things, focus on the camera, focus on the lighting. And for me as a director, even though I can shoot and I enjoy shooting sometimes, I feel like I actually provide the most value to my clients when I don't have a camera in my hands, when I have someone else who's running the camera and I can focus on the storytelling and on what's happening on the camera and thinking about those higher level things, and then directing a team of people that are all really good at specific things to elevate the entire production. So that's kind of what commercial filmmaking looks like. The budget is reinvested into the project. When I talk about freelance specialists in the Lincoln and Omaha market, we're a small market nationally, but we do have some very skilled freelancers who can do things like be a gaffer or a grip or an AC or a DP. And you can look up what all those things mean later if you want to. But when we can hire those people to help us, our internal team at Unanimous, we have 3 or 4 different, where we have 5 people on our video team, and we all are pretty good at different things. But when you give us a bigger budget, we're able to consider different types of equipment, higher level equipment, higher level specialists, and it just ends up giving us more tools to do an even better job. And then, what that's going to look like, you're going to have more control in your locations, your lighting. It's more collaborative, and you're really trying to create lasting video assets that are for campaigns, brand launches, rebrands, content libraries, and broadcast commercials that really stand out, especially in our market. So that's the crash course of those differences. I'm going to move on. Jamie, you can still hear me, right? I might check once in a while because I can't see anything but what I've got here.
Yep.
Okay,
Good.
Okay, cool. So, when we think about, for us, we work with a lot of different types of organizations, and the reason that we can do great work for healthcare or do great work in the construction space or in just all sorts of different types of clients is just by having a process that really works well, and can be adapted as needed. But in general, this is like sort of the 5 steps that we would take on most projects. And then all of these would have sub processes underneath them. And really, like, if you compare video to other areas of our agency, if you compare video to other areas of our agency, they're all following a similar process in different ways. Maybe the designers aren't going to be out there filming something or editing something, but we're all going to take that time on the front end to discover, to learn about you, to do some research, to try to come into a project just being very confident and very aware of who you are and how we can best make recommendations that will give you a return on your investment. And that's part of the strategy. When I talk about pre-production, that's where you start to dive down into the nitty-gritty of where are we filming, when are we filming, who are we filming with, what gear do we need, figuring out all that stuff. And then production day, I tell people, especially on our commercial filmmaking level productions, we're kind of like a circus where we roll in and we sort of take over and get what we plan to get. And we, of course, you're aware of all this ahead of time and you're a part of it with us, but and then we roll out of town and it's like we were never there. From there we edit, and for me, I think editing is really where if you have good planning and you have good production, that's one thing, but editing is where it all comes together. You can give me a hard drive full of the best footage in the world, but it's worthless unless it's edited together well. And from there we deliver, and that's where I worked for a video production company previously, and I felt like we'd give them the files and then we'd say, good luck. And what I love about Unanimous is that we have a marketing department that is then able to help with the distribution and promotion of the product. So Jamie will talk about that at the end here, but that's the process. So we're going to move on to storytelling. And again, like I said, we really want to lay down a foundational understanding of storytelling before we start to talk about the practical for how it can be implemented in for you. So storytelling, I love talking about storytelling. One of my favorite things to talk about because it is its own art form, and people don't necessarily think of it that way, but I think it's very inherently wired into humans. Like we are wired for storytelling. It is the first art form. You imagine the earliest humans sitting in a cave around a fire, and maybe they don't even have a written language yet, but they're probably telling each other stories. And some of those stories have transcended time. I mean, right now Christopher Nolan is working on the Odyssey, like a movie from that story. And that story is thousands of years old. So just think about the power of something, a good story that can be told for thousands of years. That's insane. And part of that is because stories build connection and empathy. They connect us to people. If I read the Odyssey now, I can connect with some of those characters because they're human, just like me. If I watch a video or a documentary about a problem all the way across the world, a problem that would never affect me on day-to-day life, suddenly I have awareness, connection, and empathy because it's other human beings who are facing a problem. And because of that, stories have the power to change the world. And I think we've seen that again and again throughout history, and we see it every single day now. So it influences people to make decisions. And I think when it comes to marketing, we all have good intentions here. We all want to tell these stories because we believe in what we do, and we believe that we have the power to help make people's lives better. And so that's how storytelling can be a very powerful tool for you and for your organization. All good stories have some similar ingredients. And I think these are some of the foundational ingredients to a lot of great stories. Like, first of all, having a character that's searching for something intangible, something that we can all relate to, right? Like belonging, freedom, redemption, love. And when you start to think about movies you love or novels, I'm more of a movie guy myself, but you start to think about these things, you're gonna, maybe instantly a character comes to mind that you connect with really, really well. And they're searching for something and they want that thing, and there's something at stake if they don't get that thing. And along the way, there's going to be, it's not easy, if the Notebook was that now I can't even remember the main characters. Ryan Gosling, if they fell in love right away and there was, their relationship just continued from there, it would be a really boring movie. But there's so much conflict along the way, and that's what makes it really interesting. Transformation or revelation. I think we all love stories of transformation because we all want to transform ourselves. We all want to, we imagine becoming a better version of ourselves, and we hear and see those stories of transformations, and we're inspired by it. Or revelation is kind of a contrast to that. One of my favorite shows is Breaking Bad. And I think what's interesting about that show, I think we're past the point where I can get in trouble for spoilers. If you haven't watched it by now, that's kind of on you. You're probably never going to watch it. But in that show, Walt is the main character, and he, what you find throughout the show is that Walt was kind of always a bad guy, in my opinion, but he was just kind of in circumstances where that was sort of dormant, and then things happen and he makes decisions that kind of reveal who he really is. And there isn't really transformation for Walt. There's kind of just this, peeling back the layers to discover this is who really is. And then really authenticity over polish. If you watch, and going back to talking about social content versus commercial film, I mean, you think about the difference between a viral social video and a Super Bowl commercial that everyone hates. And the Super Bowl commercial that everyone hates millions and millions of dollars were spent on it. And it's very polished. It's got, all the right ingredients, but a lot of times it's because of the lack of authenticity. I personally, I don't know how close to home this will be, but pharmaceutical commercials, I think, are, a good example of that, where it's a lot of beautiful footage, people laughing and smiling as they tell you how this drug can, all the side effects that are bad. And there's just that contrast there. And it just kind of makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable when you really think about it. So good storytelling leverages authenticity to connect and to be effective. So when we think about how to tell a good story, those are the ingredients. This is the path. This is a path. It's called the 8-point story arc. It's a basic path that a lot of stories use. And once I start to break this down, I think it's going to be more familiar to you than you realize. And also, you're probably going to start to see it in more places. But this is what the 8-point story arc looks like. You have, a stasis, which is your starting point of your story, where you kind of establish the world that you're in, the world that your characters are in, and then something happens to change that and to throw it off and to send our character or characters on a quest, on a journey. Lord of the Rings, I think, is a great example of these first 3 points, especially, where you're at the Shire, and then Frodo gets the ring from Bilbo, and boom, we're off on the quest, right? And then along the journey, there's a lot of surprises. And going back to the Lord of the Rings, there's a lot especially in Lord of the Rings, which is a really long movie, and a lot of, there's 3 of them. There's a lot of surprises. There's a lot of critical choices. So sometimes you're kind of in this middle zone for a lot of the story, kind of going back and forth. But a critical choice for Frodo in the first movie is, going to, once he gets to Rivendell, is he going to continue the journey? And he's the only one. He realizes he's the best for the job to take it to Mordor. So, that's and what he realizes when he decides to do that is that he can never go back to the stasis. Like, his life will be different if he chooses that. And that's why it's such a heavy choice for him to make. And I think really for a lot of characters in the first, when they're starting on their quest and surprise, what they're actually hoping for is that they can go back to what was comfortable and how things were. And then they get to this critical choice, and it's like, it can never be the same again. And that leads us to our climax and a reversal and a resolution. And that's the reversal is where everything kind of gets put back into a new normal, which is your resolution. And some people would say that new normal is also a stasis, which means that we can start the next story. And so that's the 8-point story arc. Let's break it down on a movie that most of us are going to know and have probably watched many, many times by this point, especially if you have kids. I was a kid when this came out. I don't know how that ages me exactly, but Toy Story, and honestly, a lot of Pixar movies just follow the 8-point story arc so well. I'm not the first person to break down a Pixar movie compared to the 8-point story arc, but it's a lot of fun. So let's just go through this real quick. For the 8-point story arc in Toy Story, there's our stasis is the starting point of our story is that Woody is Andy's favorite toy and the unquestioned leader of the toy room. Life is good, predictable, and Woody is happy. And then the trigger, which is Buzz Lightyear arrives and is instantly Andy's new favorite toy, which is a real problem for Woody. So Woody's quest is to get rid of Buzz and retake his place as Andy's favorite toy. The surprise is that both toys, there's, again, multiple surprises along the way, but the big one is that both toys end up lost and they're stuck at Sid's house. And the quest really changes. Now they've got to work together to escape Sid's house before Andy's family moves. And when I was talking about conflict earlier as an ingredient, that's a piece of conflict, right? Andy is going, they're moving. And so they've got a time limit to get out of Sid's house, right? So that kind of the stakes, that raises the stakes, adds tension, and makes the story all that much more compelling. So the critical choice for Woody is he going to embrace Buzz as an ally? And for Buzz, I think this is also another fun. Buzz is kind of the second main character, I suppose, the secondary character. But Buzz is kind of on his own 8-point story arc as well, because his stasis is that he thinks he's a space ranger, and his trigger is that he's opened up by a kid at his birthday and is being told that he's a toy. So then his quest is to prove that he's actually a space ranger. And so it's kind of a whole deal once you start to break this down. It's a lot of fun. But anyway, so really for Woody, though, focusing on Woody, Woody's got to embrace Buzz as an ally, humble himself, realize that he's never going to be, he probably isn't going to be Andy's favorite toy. He has to let that go. And Buzz has to accept that he's a toy, and work together with Woody, and that being a toy is not just accept that he's a toy, but that being a toy is important, and that it's worthy, and it's worth it to be Andy's favorite toy, and that's still just as important as being a space ranger. So then they work together and they escape. That's our climax. Our reversal is now they're back with Andy. They get back with Andy, and they kind of enter into their new normal, their resolution, which, they're going to live happily ever after until the next, or at least until the next story trigger. And I love at the end of Toy Story how there's, if you remember, it's Christmas and you hear the dog barking, and it just instantly makes your brain go, oh, you can almost see that there's a whole nother story that's about to begin. And it just makes you leave the theater, just so excited for another story to be told. So that's the 8-point story arc. I love this stuff. I'm super nerdy about it. But hopefully, you found it interesting as well. All right. Now we're going to get into impact-driven storytelling. Real quick, before we dive into this part, is there any questions? Should I pause real quick, or should I just keep going?
Bill, let's keep moving. We can save questions to the end.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Just wanted to be sure. Like I said, I can't see you all, so I'm just kind of talking to my computer, assuming that you're there. So, okay. Impact-driven storytelling. In healthcare, a lot of people, I think if you haven't really done video storytelling specifically, but even just marketing in general, these are just some questions that you can start asking yourself. Who's your target audience? And maybe there should be a question above this that's, like what do we need to be advertising? What do we need to be marketing for our services? And then who's our target audience? What are the kinds of stories that are going to connect best with them? And what's the best way to tell the story? Sometimes that's a little bit driven by budget, right? Like maybe you're not going to be able to do like a commercial production, but maybe you could interview them over the phone and transcribe that interview and get some good quotes, or get a photo of them and post it on, and get their permission, obviously, and post on social media, something like that. And then how's that going to reach the target audience? And these are the kinds of questions that you got to ask yourself before you even really dive in. When we think about now I just went over the 8-point story arc, and I'm going to blow it up real quick, because in reality, right, like an 8-point story arc, that's great for a movie, that's great for a novel. We don't necessarily have time to tell that story every single time that we start a project. But really, this is kind of like, if I'm just summarizing this into a marketing friendly format that is simplified and going to connect with people, this is kind of what that looks like. We establish our problem, which is the challenge that we need to overcome. We present the solution, and then we go for meaning. Now, again, this is very high level, simplified. This is going to be broken down differently per project that you work on, but problem, solution, meaning. And so now I'm going to go into a couple of different examples. So one of our partners is York General, and last year we got to do this 30-second commercial where it's all local actors. I mean, I guess real people that we had acting, I suppose is a better way to put it, as well as people from the hospital who work at York General. And this is just a 30-second spot that we'll show, and then we'll talk about it. So here we go.
Hey Brock, it's Grandpa. Sorry I've been missing your games, but it's really been tough getting out.
Your motivation to move forward, your determination to take the first step. We are here for the path you never thought you'd have to take, providing the care you need to help you get to where you want to be. For the moments that matter most, York General, our focus is you.
Okay. Did Jamie, you guys heard that, right?
Yep, audio is good. And I was just going to add, I think there's so many variables that Bill's been talking about that goes into video content and creation. And like he mentioned, in this instance, we were able to pull kind of talent from, the community and the hospital. And so I just like to bring that up because when you kind of look at cost investments and all of that, there's definitely variables that we can discuss and that can help scale that back a little bit, and in this case, I think it worked out really, really well. And I think a lot of times in these local communities, it's kind of an added value to have that because it's people that are real and you recognize them. And so there's definitely just so many variables that go into video, but I just kind of wanted to remind kind of everyone that all of that is kind of up for discussion and dialogue. There's no kind of one size fits all for, creating these videos. We really make sure it's tailored to kind of what you need and even kind of that investment that you're looking for. So.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like this is going back to even the first thing I was talking about. This is kind of just, one type of approach, and we'll show a second video here that shows a completely different type of approach, but very strategic. All these shots were controlled and planned, and we didn't just show up to a football game and show, help find an empty spot. The client helped us cast extras to fill those stands, and it was actually really maybe like 15 people, I think, or 20 people. So it was all just kind of strategically filming in a way that it looked more full than it actually was. But, back to the problem solution meaning. Problem is Grandpa can't make it to his grandson's games. We established that right away. The solution is Grandpa's healthcare journey through orthopedics and physical therapy. And this one, really we're advertising orthopedics and physical therapy, but also it's kind of, I would say this one is more of a just brand spot in general. It kind of just makes the hospital as a whole look great. And then, yes, the meaning, this is what people will connect with the best. This is where they feel something. Seeing Grandpa at the game, hugging grandson, and the meaning is Grandpa won't miss out on what matters most. And, York General was a key part of that. All right, so let's go to the second one real quick. So this is Ron's story. It's actually a similar demographic. In some ways a similar story. Like obviously with York General, we kind of made that up a little bit. Like he didn't actually have a knee injury or anything like that. Although I've heard he gets asked regularly how he's doing. So maybe that's one downside of being in the commercial in the small town is that around town they'll be like, oh, I didn't know you had a knee surgery. He's like, oh, that was actually not how it was. But in Ron's case, it is true, and this is more of a doc style approach. This video is 2.5 minutes, so we're going to start that and then chat about it at the end and just see how the storytelling translates.
It's a different feeling when you can get outdoors and be a part of nature. I get a sense of connection to the outside world. I mean, a sense of fulfillment, sense of enjoyment. That's why recovering is so important. And LOPT had a great impact on my life. I'm an active guy. Now we have a granddaughter, so my wife and I are doing daycare 2 days a week. I golf, I fish, I make sausage, and I hunt with some friends. I have no problem sitting in a deer stand all day and just being attentive to what's going on in the woods. At the age of 23, I started golfing. I've been doing that for a long time. As my knees got bad, golf became less enjoyable. I couldn't walk very far without noticeable limp and increased pain. I didn't dread golfing, but I paid a price for golf. And it really got worse about 2 years ago. My wife and I loved to vacation together, but we were in Utah and Colorado to all the national parks, and I was unable to go on very long walks. I wouldn't be anywhere where I am today without my wife. She had 2 knee surgeries and did her rehabs at LOPT. She had great success, and she always came home from there bubbly, and I'm like, well, why wouldn't I go there? My lead therapist at LOPT was Kim. We did lots of stretches up and down stairs, step over cones. We did weight training to gain strength back. They are one of the most customer-focused groups I've ever worked with. They know who you are. They want to find out what your goals are and help you achieve them. And my goal was really just getting back to the things that I wanted to do. If I had not gone to physical therapy following my surgery, I don't think I would be golfing in 2 leagues. Don't know if I would be able to hunt every day and not take a day off to recover. My wife, I mean, she's been my friend and spouse for a long time, 44 years now. Spending time with her is always special. This last time, we were able to climb the mountains and go see the hidden waterfalls, and it was something that I would never been able to do before. Because of LOPT, there's really nothing I can't do.
All right. I love it. I love these types of videos too, where we get to know them, outside of what's the final edited version. And like Ron is just the real deal. The way this story presents him, I think, is just exactly how he is. And but when we're talking about just that problem solution meaning arc, it breaks down like this. Ron's knee pain was getting in the way of the best years of his life. The solution was LOPT and the surgery, and physical therapy. And the meaning is that Ron regained freedom to enjoy his hobbies and time with people he loved. And yeah, that's just a beautiful story. And also with this, this is a 2.5 minute version that the client will use in different platforms. But also there's a 60-second version that we've created from this. That's an even more condensed version, but it still follows these 3 points really, really well, and still, and it maybe fits better for a social media audience. So a lot of the projects we do that are more doc style, that's part of it. We'll do some cut downs that are a little bit shorter for the short attention spans on social media. So, that's my part of it. And so once we've finished the video, this is where, if you're working with us on the marketing and distribution side, you'd be working with Jamie and her team. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill. I think a lot of times this is where a lot of our clients and partners need some extra support. It's one thing to create a video. Creating the video is only half the story. Distribution is where the story meets its audience. So the last thing you want to do is invest and create this amazing video and story, but not have anybody see it. And so a lot of these, intentional and purpose conversations are happening really at the front end of this project to make sure we understand, who our target audience is. It's really important to understand, okay, who are we trying to reach with these videos? Where do they spend their time? Is it online? Is it social media? Where is it? What kind of budget are we working with? So we can be really intentional and purposeful with strategically kind of providing recommendations of how to distribute your budget. And then timing, I think, is really important. Of when will the story or this, video make the biggest impact with that audience that we're trying to reach. So, I think now more than ever, coming out of COVID, people were digesting content differently, and we were almost forced into this world of video. And I think more and more that's how people are consuming content. And so there's so much more opportunities than I think there have ever been to be able to distribute video content. Like that last video we just saw, it was fairly long, 2 minutes, and that's great for your website. But if we know we want to be able to use that across social media or other channels, we can make shorter versions for social media. So a lot of times with those deliverables, you're getting different kind of cuts and versions and lengths. So based on what we talked about in terms of who are we trying to reach, where are they? These are just some options of where these videos can live. They can live on your website. We could have a campaign in place to make sure we're driving people to that landing page to see the video. We can create social media versions to post on your organic page or to run as ads. For additional visibility. You've got, your local programming, cable TV. You've got a lot of, I think locally, we've been running a lot of ads during sports with Nebraska. There's streaming, there's OTT. Do you want to run on Hulu? Do you want to run, on YouTube TV? You can get really niche targeting there. Email, digital ads. We've been doing a lot in movie theaters lately and seeing a lot of success just with brand awareness. And brand recognition. So there is a lot of opportunity to distribute video content. And I think where we can help is really making sure we're putting it in the right place to reach the right audience to make the biggest impact. So yeah, I think with that, you've got stories worth watching. We know in healthcare, there's so many stories, and now we just want to make sure that people see them.
Yeah, I want to add to Jamie, we've also had good results with people adding QR codes to printed materials as well.
Yeah.
QR codes that can,
Yeah.
watch the story, see the story, that type of thing. So, that's another one to consider as well, where especially with something that's a little bit longer, I feel like with email or with a QR code, you kind of can catch people maybe at a time where they would sit down and watch that 2 to 5 minute long video versus social media when they're just kind of scrolling and stuff. So anyway, but that's what we got.
Yeah, and I think, oh, sorry, was someone going to speak up?
Jamie, I think that was bounce back.
Okay, I was just going to mention, I think the process can sound a little overwhelming, and Bill and I always encourage, if anyone's even just interested or remotely interested in talking about video or the process, that's where it starts. We aren't, pushing you to do it. It's just, let's have some dialogue and understand if it's the right fit for you, or maybe you need to talk budget so you can budget for your next fiscal year. I think more than anything, sometimes these projects are, let's have some dialogue up front to really understand any challenge you're having or any goals you want to achieve. And then we can help maybe make some recommendations of what type of video makes the most sense. Is it a recruiting video or a brand video? So just if there's any level of interest, I always say don't hesitate to reach out just to start a dialogue and a connection. There's no timeline on our end for anything. I think the more you can talk out loud, the more helpful it can be. So
Jamie, Bill, what incredibly well done. In preparation for this webinar, I know a key variable to storytelling is authenticity, and I was fully planned to ask about authentic steps member hospitals could take, but Bill, I think you nailed that in a variety of ways. Love the story of the individual and the care that they received, and how you pulled in real life actors in the community. And another, I think that's some authentic items. Jamie, Bill, I do have one question, and then we can certainly open up to the audience. As I put myself in the shoes of our member hospitals, there's a lot that feel resource constrained. So with video storytelling being so important, what's maybe a small step or a place that you'd recommend members that feel that financial constraint? Where could they start?
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, I can try to answer that first. I think you know, that social content, like the UGC stuff, like I said, we've got good storytelling tools right here.
Yeah, we do.
And that between that and the internet and the research that you can do, and if you can understand kind of those high level ideas of what people connect with and what some of those key what kind of stories you should be telling, you know, I think that that opens up a lot of options for you, with, you know, an internal team or a local videographer even, that type of a thing. But another thing that I talk to people about too is if you're looking to maybe make a more substantial investment that, you know, you want to have like a commercial that's really good quality, that's gonna, you got to think about it as a multi-year investment. I think sometimes where you're going to use this a lot across a lot of different platforms across, you know, potentially, if it's well done enough, potentially multiple years. And so sometimes you might think about it as like, how could we double up? You know, if your fiscal year ends in July, maybe we're looking to spend, you know, some of this in June and some of this in July, right? Or whatever, and try to like think of it that way, and think of it as, if we invest here on the front end, you know, maybe next year we don't have to spend this money the same way. You know, and that's, I guess in the end, that's one way that I try to, you know, tell people to think. But obviously everybody's situation is going to be different.
Sure. No, thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
And before we conclude, I do want to just take a pause for a few seconds. Does anyone in the presentation right now, does anyone have a specific question? Now is an excellent opportunity to ask the experts in video storytelling. I will take the silence, Bill and Jamie, as that you nailed it, knocked it out of the
We
park.
answered all their questions.
We'll take that, yeah.
So
The
Go,
only
Jamie.
thing I was going to add to what Bill's kind of said too is, I think in anything we like to do, it's more about understanding the root of the challenge or the need first before deciding exactly what it is you need, you know, and that goes for video and anything. And so just to be that strategic partner. And then I think there are often times where we can present investments in tiers and tier levels, you know, too, to kind of see like, here's kind of what you get at each tier type of thing. But Bill's exactly right that having those initial dialogue and conversation helps us craft something that you can use more long term. So you're not having to invest every single year. So, you know, maybe if you invest 1 year on getting the video, next year you use those funds to actually, and for media to actually get it out there. So there are some smart ways that we can help to of figuring out what's the best way to use our dollar, you know, make it go the furthest. So
yeah, and I'd say like that's kind of, I think everybody on our team here kind of has that maximizing type mentality where it's like, I look at the resources available and think about, you know, how to best use those resources. You know, not obviously we're a business, we, you know, have a bottom line we want to hit, but like I think at the end of the day, I want, like for me personally, I just want to make good stuff. I want to tell great stories. I want to make good content. I want to, you know, push the bar and, you know, raise the bar higher and higher. And so the more resources you can put towards it, that's just the more tools that we have at our disposal to create something that's going to create a return on your investment.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are just 3 minutes before the 1 o'clock hour here. So Jamie and Bill, want to thank you for the time, the expertise, the education. We'll make sure that this is sent out to everyone who is registered. And with that, let's go ahead and conclude today's presentation. So,
perfect. Thanks everyone.
Thank you
Appreciate the
all.
opportunity.
Yeah.
of course, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.